Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Nishwin and Startup Incubation and Innovation Center, IIT Kanpur, welcomes you all to our roundtable on digital transformation strategies in Indian manufacturing sector. Rapid growth in information technology and application of computing skills has led to innovation in many new technologies such as Internet of Things, big data, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence. By integrating these technologies with machine, conventional manufacturing companies are being transformed into intelligent ones, also known as smart factories. Now, these smart factories are able to communicate, analyze, and coordinate within themselves. As production systems start at the brink of Industry 4.0, countries need to build an ecosystem and determine how to best prepare to benefit from this transformation and collaborate across various stakeholders. Build public private partnerships and make organizations ready to embrace and adopt this revolution to produce effective results. Manufacturing firms have to be agile and innovative so as to achieve growth and core competitiveness. Indian manufacturing sector has joined the worldwide digital revolution with the support of government incentives and increased investment and efforts of stakeholders. However, the effects of transformation strategies are not yet realized fully. Now, this may be due to lack of understanding and awareness, lack of suitable approaches, and methods of implementation. In today's roundtable, our experts will share their in depth insights gained from their experience of implementing or consulting on Industry Revolution 4.0 strategies in manufacturing sector in India. Their views will be used to catalyze dialogue with different stakeholder groups to inform the development of modern industrial strategies. Leaders from the government, industry, and education need to work together to address key challenges, build on opportunities, and define joint actions at the national level. We are grateful to our experts who are from diverse domains for accepting our invitation and coming on our platform for this discussion. Now, I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce our panelists to the audience. Uh, Dr. Nikhil Agarwal, he's the Chief Executive Officer of the Startup Incubation and Innovation Center, IIT Kanpur. He's one of the foremost champions of the innovations and startup ecosystem in the country. He's the former CEO of Andhra Pradesh Innovation Society by Government of Andhra Pradesh and is also the former Vice Chairman of MILAP from Government of Maharashtra. Dr. Agarwal has founded businesses and advised firms on strategic matters. Dr. Agarwal is High Commissioner for WBAF India. Meet Mr. Piyush Sharma. He's an executive in residence at UCLA. He's a global CEO coach and a C-suite startup advisor. He's an awarded top-rated global business leader, celebrated speaker, top influencer, and sought-after thought leader, besides being a TEDx speaker. He represents the interests of United Nations affiliates as an advisory board member and as advisor for UN SDGs. He is a member of the board at IIT Delhi for Technology Business Incubation Unit, besides being a star mentor of change at Niti Aayog and a member of the mentor board at Ashoka University. He is the India Senator of WBAF, an affiliate partner of G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. Meet Mr. Alagiri Govindswamy, also Giri G. He is the Consulting Director for PMC Global Systems Private Limited, a leading Industry 4.0 system integrator in India. He has 25 years of consulting, lean, ERP experience from multiple industry segments and traveled extensively across the world for major turnaround initiatives. He's working with signature clients to chart out their strategic and tactical industry 4.0 roadmaps, introduced a unique Industry 4.0 assessment and maturity framework, and developing various I.4 solutions for the MSME sector. He's also an adjunct and visiting faculty for leading B schools in India. Meet Mr. Sanjeeva Shivesh. He's the founder and CEO of the Entrepreneurship School. Mr. Shivesh has been a serial entrepreneur in the education space. In earlier part of his career, he has worked in private equity, strategy consulting, and civil service, where he gained rich experience of infrastructure development, predominantly logistics and transportation, real estate, and education. He specializes in startups, new products, service development, innovation, etc. And he has also managed joint ventures, collaborations, and split ups. Mr. Sandeep Rohela is a business manager with more than 10 years of experience in corporate strategy, strategic planning, business transformation, internal consulting, products and brand strategy, etc. Mr. Rohela is currently involved with corporate strategy and business planning, wherein he's looking to improve current business and fine tune the avenues for growth. Meet Mr. Suraj Jayaraman. He's the co-founder and country head of Performatic Solutions, a technology innovation and a global technology company that comes with a group of change makers who focus on bringing innovation from futuristic perspective to help customers ranging from startups to enterprises to innovate in their area of business. Their motto is fast forward innovation. Mr. Suraj has held senior management positions, helping the companies to strategize and execute their ideas using innovative technologies, managed numerous projects in logistics, production, procurement, CRM, etc. He's an innovation expert serving as a catalyst for change. Thank you all the panelists for taking out your valuable time and coming on our platform. Now, before we begin the session, I would like to take a short poll for the audience. So the first question is, what are the objectives of Industry 4.0? Okay, 5 more seconds to go. Thank you, dear audience. So the objectives of Industry 4.0, all of the above, 83%. Increased efficiency, enabled self-controlling, reduced complexity. Which industry branches are suitable for Industry 4.0 development? 67% of the people chose Industry 4.0 can be used in all industrial contexts where processes need to be more intelligent. Okay. And what is a smart factory? Factories and logistics systems that will operate and organize themselves without human interaction. So I think the answers chosen were correct. Thank you so much, audience, for your answers. Now I'll start with the roundtable discussion. And my first question will be to Dr. Agarwal. Dr. Agarwal, please share with us your thoughts on where does India stand in the adoption of Industry 4.0 in manufacturing? And how does it compare to developed countries in the world?
So I will not be very optimistic to start with. One of the reason is that if you are the leader in manufacturing in India, you need to be learned to be critical. Unfortunately, in India, we have learned the political dialogue of praising everything and ignoring rest of the things. That should not be the case. I think it's a high time that we should start recognizing that where the improvement can be done. And if we look at I will take a step back and talk about economy, and then I'll come to Industry 4.0. So a lot of people are now gung-ho about that we are coming to the pre-COVID level in terms of, or achieved 60% of the pre-COVID level, 70% of the pre-COVID level. But let me take you 6 months back in February and January. Actually, we were quite bad in terms of economic output in January, February. So there was nothing to get gung-ho about that we are doing extremely well in pre-COVID level. pre-COVID level was also bad for India. And one of the main reason for us was not having confidence on us that we can be self-reliance or we can achieve self-reliance. That is one of the main reason. Because buying cheap and buying from abroad has become a norm. You are based in Singapore, you know that Singapore is full of trading companies, thousands of trading companies which are buying material from China, from Taiwan, from Vietnam through Singapore, putting up the Singapore stamp, they are selling it to the countries like India. What is the reason that we are not able to adapt and we cannot adopt the norms of Industry 4.0? Is one of the reason is that we don't have a self confidence towards it. That's one of the main reason. And I would certainly say that we have enough capabilities, whether institutions like IIT Kanpur, we have the world class, as we go along, I'll give you certain examples. We have world class manufacturing base. We have, in fact, one of the first center for computer science in India was set up in IIT Kanpur around 50 years back. And today, that center and the people who have graduated from that center have made some of the best known companies in the world, whether it's Infosys or somebody is running IBM and whatnot. But we were not able to make a truly world class product for certain reasons. That same reason is applicable in the manufacturing side also. Uh, None of our companies is able to make something which is sold across the world in 200 countries. So now there is an opportunity for us that we can change these things. Uh, we can truly implement the norms and the principles of Industry 4.0. Now, given the self-reliant principle, given the Atmanirbhar Bharat Nara by the Prime Minister, we can actually implement them. There are a number of people who have approached us in recently, and they, in fact, today, just before this seminar, I was speaking to the principal secretary from Uttar Pradesh government, and they were saying that can we do technology transfer? Now, this kind of discussion has never happened in last a decade or so, where the serious level technology transfer is asked by the state government, because the easiest way for the state government was to buy it from abroad, ask for a tender, then the foreign companies can sell it at a cheaper cost or maybe the low quality, but that's a different story. So now there is a serious effort to set up industry within the states, and there is a competition. Now, not only the competition which is going on between Korea and China, or Korea or India for the Chinese company, or Vietnam and India, there is a competition between Maharashtra and UP, Haryana and UP, and Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. So there is a state level competition which is going on. So with this seminar, I certainly want to convey one point, very important point, is that we should start looking more closely the principles of Industry 4.0. I think that we are now sitting on a great opportunity. If we lose this opportunity, we have to wait for another pandemic to come. But I think this is a time for us to churn around. So you're coming back to your question about the difference between developed and developing country will not be there anymore. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so that is actually, yeah, true. When India moved towards Industry 4.0, and I think we have the right, you know, the people are there. Only need is to put the resources and training and the right kind of ecosystem that we need to get it going, right? Yeah. So my next question is on the ecosystem to Mr. Piyush Sharma. So, Mr. Sharma, kindly share with us whether India has the right ecosystem. That's just I pointed out that whether they have right ecosystem for embracing Industry 4.0, whether in terms of technology, manpower, support, or funding.
Yep. I think that's a good question. And I would echo, on the one hand, the feelings so emphatically expressed by Nikhil. I remember Aristotle said that poverty is the parent of a revolution, right? So the fourth industrial revolution is no different. I think impoverished manufacturing processes are causing downtimes. We know they're causing accidents, they're causing waste, fraud, mistakes. So current factories just cannot adjust to meet customer demands. They kind of fail to predict new trends and streamline their supply chains. So we need to evaluate the strengths of India. The strengths of India very clearly are that we are human power wise a very, very technologically advanced nation. I think our engineers, our software people, the way we have got the human resources going, that we are the human factory to the world, are things which are very, very pluses for us. In terms of manufacturing, I know that from 2010 to where we are standing now, the manufacturing share is constantly shrinking. Despite the Made in India campaign and Make in India campaign, we've really not been able to make that much headway. And let's say in terms of technology comparison, if we look at what China and where the Americas are leading and where the rest of the other developed world is leading, we are nowhere close. So fundamentally, an industry 4.0 is wanting us to be able to integrate the new technologies to somehow be able to finally achieve, let's say, a level of digital readiness of the manufacturing firms as also all the sector, in terms of being able to bring it from, let's say, a mass customization stage of a Ford era to a stage of a personalized customization, and on the other hand, from a delayed response to an on-time response, right, a real-time response. So in all those things, technologies need to be deployed rightfully. There are the challenges of the MSME sector being the largest and disproportionate around the world also, as also in India. And there are challenges of adoption of these technologies by the MSME sector, which needs to be amply supported by the government. So ecosystem wise, I would say human resources wise, yes, we are checkboxed and we are very well settled. In terms of, let's say, geopolitical situation with things moving out of China and let's say people looking at India in a big way as the second largest or the real largest emerging economy, we have a big play out there. In terms of the relations also, we would any day be better placed with our relations with, let's say, US and the rest of the world as compared to China. So those are the big opportunities in front of us. uh, in terms of real on the ground situation, I know that the government continues to announce those schemes. There are implementations also happening, but whether they are really translating into big act on the ground, I'm not too sure, right? And that's where I echo the feelings that were expressed earlier. So I guess ecosystem has the very important component of the consumption side. So consumers are today moving at a pace where the consumer is wanting to consume everything wherever they are, however they are, and through whatever medium that they're wanting to consume. And this also stands for the manufacturing sector. So that needs to be appreciated and everyone needs to kind of gear up their act. So that's where the entire matrix for me will lie.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think my one part of the question is still remaining about the funding. How do you feel about the funding for implementation of the strategies? Now, as far as the government schemes are concerned, as you said, that they might not be translating into the tangible, things that we can see or the tangible progress that we can see. But still, the government does the government allocate funds for implementation of Industry 4.0? Do they support this kind of technology revolution in the manufacturing sector?
For sure. I mean, in every of these acts, you can never get the planning wrong. I think they have always been from the Nehruvian era to the era that we today are in, from a planning commission to a Niti Aayog. I think as far as getting the voice share right and the share of voice or the communication right, I know I'm aware something called Champions exists, which is aimed at supporting MSMEs through a holistic technology platform. And if I remember it right, Champion stands for creation and harmonious application of modern processes for increasing the output and national strength, something to that effect. And there are tens of other such acronyms that they've got going, as also funding, as Nikhil was mentioning earlier. So we know that Atmanirbhar Bharat, and then they've announced the various schemes in terms of the interest waivers and various other things. But in terms of real implementation and the results are proving it. So we know that the industrial output data has not been released consciously by the government for the last at least 3 to 4 months now. So the fact that all those things are also indicators which allow us to get the storytelling right and the narrative right and our own judgments right is where the implementation remains a key factor. In terms of funding, in terms of schemes, in terms of announcements, and perhaps in terms of a few pockets benefiting from it, I would say yes, it exists. But what we need at a national level, when we are talking about, it's a It's a all-pervasive transformation and implementation at a national level, which I do not think is happening.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for this insight.
Yeah.
I'll take my next question with Mr. Alagiri. He, as you know, his profile says, and we had a good chat also before this webinar. He mentioned that he's been working on tactical industry roadmaps and 4.0 assessment and maturity framework. So, in your opinion, what are the characteristics of a successful digital transformation strategy, or what would be called as a readiness for a firm? Manufacturing firm in India for implementation?
Yeah. Yeah. So if we take India, we have two kind of manufacturing setup: the big companies and MSMEs. And there is no, what can I say, awareness we can see from MSMEs, so we can exclude from the discussion. Even if you go to the big companies like TVS group of companies or Rana group of companies, these are all multi-billion-dollar companies operating from Chennai. And unfortunately, we couldn't see the expected awareness from the senior management team. Yeah. The moment we talk about Industry 4.0, you're talking about 10 different technologies, starting from IoT, artificial intelligence, yeah, and augmented reality, and so on. And these senior management people, they got very, what can I say, um, minimum knowledge about Industry 4.0, and they're always confused. They're always asking us, saying that there are so many technologies, how do we go forward? Okay. And also, they want to go with cautious approach. They are taking a small area in the factory, and they want us to do the proof of concept. And they want to see the benefit. Then they want to go for horizontal deployment across the factories. Okay. So having said that, convincing the management team saying that Industry 4.0 will bring a lot of benefits to you in long term, the marathon task for us. And so far, for last 3 years interaction with Indian companies, only two companies invited us for charting out next to 5 years strategy plan. Just all companies, they are limiting only with IoT implementation or piecemeal basis, I would say. Okay, come to your question. What would be the ideal scenario for I4.0 implementation? The very first, answer is the management digital vision. Yeah, they should be able to embrace I4.0. They need to allocate the sufficient budget. Yes, we can, go for it at least. Be a leader rather than lagger.
So, in your opinion, like it's a vision and the awareness that should be present, right? With these.
Absolutely, management, they are make or break. Not even I4.0 for any progressive management philosophy.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we need to come up with some kind of motivation for the companies to go for this kind of implementation, and we have to figure out how we can create awareness for the mass sector overall. Yeah, thank you so much. My next question is to Mr. Shivesh. I request you to throw some light on the challenges in adoption and from your experience of working with startups and other SMEs. So what is, in your opinion, like what are the challenges for implementation of Industry 4.0 with small scale sector on the startups?
Right. Nisha, I think, first of all, many congratulations for bringing this topic to the fore and for discussion, right? And as it is evident from all my co-panelists here that we have been lagging as a country, India, in terms of adoption of Industry 4.0. I think when it comes to MSMEs, uh, you know, they were already lagging in Industry 3.0 also. So 4.0 is still, it was a journey for them. So 4.0 is far away from them, right? 4.0 was for, let's say, the bigger boys, the larger industries, and they are still trying to comprehend what could be the right ways to be adopting, to be going ahead with 4.0. And let me give you a few examples, right? And this is coming out of work which I do for larger manufacturing organizations, especially in automotive sector. And there the expectation was that these guys would lap up the concept, and then something should start happening, right? But come to think of it, of India, it's a large spectrum. There are countries, there are industries which have they variety of practices, and call it, there is a graded level of modernization and technology adoption. So for example, there are guys like Siemens, and we did talk about it, right? And they have adopted uh, uh, modern, or call it smart factory initiative, right? And which was one of the foundation, or one of the founding pillars of 4.0 as a concept, right? And it's not that Siemens is a factory, but they have created a solution, and then they are taking those solutions to multiple uh, parties or multiple industries, right? And they created some smart, and I've been privy to witness some of the solutions that they have created. But think of automotive plant, let's say in the outskirts of Gurgaon and Manesar and Faridabad area, where a lot of them are there, right? And when you go to 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 the floor, right, where you might want to see some sort of automation at work, uh, it is really not there, right? And we need to beg the question, why is it not there, and what do we essentially want to see in terms of automation, right? So there are terms which are which all of us get introduced to, right? Call it industrial IoT, call it additive manufacturing, right? So, or call it smarter supply chains, right? And the idea is that the information flows seamlessly from the OEM to tier one suppliers, and from maybe tier one to tier two suppliers, and that seamless flow of information has to be there. And in that, there maybe we have made some advancements, right? All good industries, they have good businesses, they have already been able to integrate at least the information flow. But what after that? So information flow does not necessarily result in material flows, right? So someone really needs to start asking, if my information is flowing, then why isn't my material flowing at the same pace, at the same level of coordination, right? So that synchronization needs to be thought through. And a lot would depend on how uh, the, the factory has been set up. Is there a mother-daughter relationship? And only then those systems can be achieved. For example, what we hear about is present in the case of Zara, let's say, right? So they have underground setup where all those material movement line is there, and material moves seamlessly from what they call the queue. But what bugs me, and I think I really want to bring this point, right? So a lot of attention has really went into in terms of material flow. What about people flow, right? So people flow is how people are organized on the shop floor, and do they get on real time basis where they got to be working and for what time. And I think we really need to cover a long distance in that sense, because I've been visiting a number of factories, forget SMEs, the larger ones, and I still don't see that level of integratedness in terms of people flow, right? So there's the talent, and the talent uh, matching and mismatch is a serious problem at all manufacturing levels. And only when we so in my view, a good industry 4.0 is where there is a seamless movement of material and seamless movement of talent both together. And that synchronicity is something that will tell us that, okay, we have moved that path. Now, I think it is still a long journey. Now, you did ask to my fellow panelists in terms of government support. And I think we have been sleeping with respect to government support. So it all started with Germany, right? So Germany, the government of Germany coined the term Industry 4.0, right? And everyone adopted, right? So it's not about the term per se. But if Germany coined the term 4.0, then Singapore said that, okay, we are unveiling smart factory initiative, right? And with smart factory initiative, we want to give ABCD sort of incentive to all the factories which are going to adopt this. So call it super accelerated depreciation, call it innovation checks or incentives, right? So those are the things which really need to be provided for factories to be taking those initiatives. And I think we are, as everyone mentioned, that economy was in the downslope even before COVID. And in that sense, the headroom for government to allow any sort of those incentives were not there. But I don't buy that argument, right? Because if you really want to have that incremental, not incremental, by 4.0, we really want to have a tangible difference in terms of productivities of factories. someone needs to wake up. So it's not necessarily Uttar Pradesh government which needs to wake up. All the state governments and all the central government and the Ministry of Industries, and maybe there are other, verticals of ministries, they all need to wake up and they say that, okay, we need to make India super in these sectors, and to make India super in these sectors, we are providing these sort of incentives. Come guys, now do it, and then let us show that the ROI, ultimately there has to be a metric on which we are going to measure this, right? Without any metric, it's not going to happen. So more than ROI, I think in terms of physical productivity, we should be really actually saying that, if we have a plant with this, conveyor belt, or the throughput is actually, if it was X, now we are moving to 1.5X. So we have implemented connected machines, we have implemented this smarter supply chains, we have smart factory initiative, and smart worker or talent management initiative. Now all this added together, it should lead to 1.5X output in the improvement of the physical output. Now actually the industry leaders need to wake up and ask these hard questions, and then say that if we need to do this, these are the required, these are the set of things which are required. Only when that happens, I think in about 3 years we'll be there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I take your point that, it has to be integrated and integrated throughout the value chain, and not just the implementation or investment in the machinery or the technology. It has to be integrated with the shop floor. It has to be integrated with the talent, people, and leadership, and of course measured by ROI. Without that, all the investment that we put in may not result in what we are thinking, right? So absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, my next question is to Mr. Jayaraman. What kind of initiatives and projects should be undertaken by the government or through public-private partnerships to have successful adoption of digital transformation? Now, I'm asking you this question because given your experience with Singapore-based firms and dealing with Singapore government, and we brought this while we are, talking, we compared India with Singapore. So please throw some light on your learnings from working in Singapore on Industry 4.0 technologies.
So, as I think all the panelists, I was listening to them, and I completely agree with all the points they have brought up. So, what Singapore? So probably I can touch base on what Singapore is doing differently, or probably something which we can look into, which probably Indian government can adapt or learn from, etc. So there are schemes or government grants, as you say, like funding from the government side, from all the countries, even in India, even in Singapore. But what Singapore I have felt is doing differently, and when I say I have felt is, I'm basically an entrepreneur coming from India and starting a company in Singapore, right? And 60% of my clients in Singapore, if you ask me, the founders of those companies are Indians, and they're still running a company in Singapore. And the benefits, so we always have this question, like why are you like placing, and probably, and some of my customers are selling their products to India, or say like other countries, right? So the question always comes in, like, what makes you lenient towards having a firm in Singapore versus running a company in India. So I have a company in India, and I also have like a subsidiary company, in Singapore as well as in India, where I like partition the workforces. The perks or how Singapore is running this whole funding scheme is where they have actually built bodies or organizations which can manage these funds. For example, there is something called Enterprise Singapore, so which not only gives the funds, so it goes through a qualification criteria for companies to qualify to have certain type of funds, and they have actually organized it in a very brilliant way of focusing on different industries, focusing on different sectors, focusing on different needs. So for example, there is something called a productivity grant, where a company can immediately buy a off-shelf product, and use it for increasing their productivity. And also there is something called a EDG grant where like a bigger manufacturer, right? They want to get into industry 4.0 or like even, automate their whole process. They can make use of those grants. And obviously because of the economic situation in Singapore, probably the funding from the government is like almost like 80%, and it can go up to like, $200,000, $300,000. But again, what I see differently is like whenever you apply for a grant, or whenever like one of our customer go for a grant, and when they go through this process, instead of just qualifying and providing this funding, they, as Mr. Shivesh rightly said, like they attach a certain KPI for getting this funding, right? And they assign a body to oversee the whole project, and they ask for project reports. They make sure this is getting implemented, and they always want to make this as a case study. So once you get a funding, once you implement something, and they want to actually put that into the country's portfolio. So that approach, or that thought process is actually very enchanting, for these companies, and also people will use. And when I say there are industry focused schemes, so someone in the automobile industry doesn't get confused on, how, I know that there is some funding, but how to use this funding and what kind of projects I can get involved. But then when there is a proper format of, okay, this is what you can use for, and this is how you can use these funds for, and this is the expectation you can have from this digital transformation, that kind of boosts the whole Giri said, where the management always are hesitant to get into this digital transformation, even though there is funding. That's mainly because there is lacking clarity on why we should do that, or how we should do that, and when we should do that. So these things, if India has plenty of resources, and most of the projects, those run in Singapore, if you see that there will be like a team, that's coming backing from India. So I think the resources are there, and government is bringing initiatives, but probably the granular level of implementation. So when a central government is coming out with a scheme, but then to state level, to even the city level, whether there are people who translates what this means, and or what it means to the company and how they can do it, then that probably might be one way this can be resolved. That's what I think. And also, like even now when we say digital transformation or industry 4.0, it's most of the traditional manufacturers, they still are not really there. So they have their own daily problems on finding a customer, to finding a vendor, to procurement, to all. So this has to be coming in a education, like educated level, where from the management to the employees, to even those organizations which talk to these companies, where they tell them that this is actually making their life easy, or making their business easy. And even government can also think of upskilling the employees, because now we are only saying that. So as you know, like one of the major grant in Singapore is to upskill employees. So they always ask, what happens if digital transfer, what happens to my job, right? So that thing is in India as well. I mean, it's actually even more than in India than Singapore. So if government focuses to say that, all these employees, there are programs to upskill yourself. So when the whole workforce are skilled enough, or like their skills go up, automatically this transformation should happen. Like, instead of having like rickshaw drivers, when you have Uber drivers. So it kind of like, the whole community has to transform, and it automatically translates that to industries as well. So government can play a big part in this sector. I mean, one thing is like how to distribute the grant, and how to focus on certain industries. And third, the community, the workforce, like focus on workforce and transform them, so that it eventually transform the industry. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Thank you. Yes, I totally agree with you as far as the Skills Future Framework program that is there, and now we have Skills SG with a lot of grants which the government is giving, especially during the COVID and post-COVID time, where they are funding about 95%. And especially, I know that in my college, because I'm also a lecturer also. So in my college, they have launched more technology related programs rather than finance or management related. So they are focusing more on technology. The government is focusing, and I think yes, India also needs that, because the major challenge that we have seen through our research also is that there is a problem of talent which we may face, yeah, through our discussions with other people and other stakeholders. That is what we gathered so far. So let's see how we can solve this issue. Yeah, so I'll take my next question to the group of the head of group strategy at escorts, Mr. Rohela. Please elaborate or tell us about how CEOs of manufacturing firms, are they willing to accept this technology revolution, or when they do, like in your company, you might have noticed that you might have implemented certain technologies, and do they have the right mindset and the commitment for implementing these measures?
Uh, I think very valid question, because I've been hearing other panelists talking about like how government is actually sleeping, but then we are also talking about even corporates also need to do more, need to think more. So yes, I can definitely give you a view of I mean CEO, because I represent a company which is a large scale manufacturing company, roughly touching $1 billion in turnover, and this dilemma is also there in any big organization. So, I mean, a CEO always has multiple priorities. I mean, any Indian manufacturing company, if you look at, I mean, because Indian market has grown so fast in last maybe 15 years. I mean, we have been a large growing economy that we have been very happy selling to Indian consumers, right? So Indian consumers basically, I mean, for selling to Indian consumers, you basically need to make your products cheap, right? So if you really want to sell cheap, then you don't need to focus on quality. You just need to ramp up your capacity, and then basically a mediocre quality would also do. But if you look at some of the good companies in India which have done well in export, those companies would have improved their manufacturing processes as well by implementing manufacturing industry 4.0. So, for example, I mean, I give one example of like Bajaj Auto in the two-wheeler segment. This is the only company which basically gets more than 40% revenue from exports. And then if you basically look at Bajaj Auto's manufacturing setup, I mean, you can say that among all the Indian automotive companies, they are probably the best, right? So I think this priority depends upon like which market is your focus. Are you like willing to sell only in India, or you want to sell to some of the other export markets where quality standards are very very different, and then you would be competing against Chinese products, and then some more products which are coming out of Korea. So I think that is one criteria which basically emerges from the vision of the company. So if we want to remain an Indian company, then probably my journey would be different. And if, let us say, I have a vision of becoming a global company selling to major countries of the world, then probably I will reinvest a lot of dollars which I am earning in the business to improve my processes, as well as I mean digitization part. The other thing also is very important to look at. I mean, if you look at any global company like emerging out of US or Germany or even Japan, I mean, the average standard profitability is in the range of 8 to 10%, right? And in India, I mean, I feel that many Indian corporates are still chasing profitability. I mean, in some of the industries, average profitability is in the range of 15 to 18%, which basically means we are just not reinvesting that money in innovation or improving our standards. That is also one of the reasons which is keeping Indian manufacturing sector backward, right? So I think a lot depends on the vision. And then basically, if any company has a global vision, then they would definitely invest in a lot of manufacturing. I mean, Indian government is saying that they want to take manufacturing sector to 20. I mean, this sector should contribute, let us say, 25% of the GDP. Today, it is only contributing 16%. But I mean, on Indian consumption, it will not happen at all. We have to export, and we have to export more and more to countries like US and Europe. So for that, we basically need to invest in innovation, technology, and then we have to invest in high quality products. So for that, I think I mean, industry 4.0 revolution is a must. It actually has to happen. And then this subject is being discussed in every boardroom of all large size companies, manufacturing companies in India. I mean, same thing is happening in our organization as well. I would say that, I mean, 2 years back, I mean, we were also talking about the awareness part. I think Mr. Giri was talking about the awareness of large companies, even those I mean, executives are not aware of Industry 4.0. So same was true for us as well. A couple of years back, we just heard this word. But I mean, if today you look at, we have understood it completely, and now we have started doing some experimentation in a limited, I mean, environment, so that first of all we realize the ROI. So I mean, any Indian CEO has multiple options whether we want to invest in capacity just to meet the demand of customers. Other thing is actually export. Third thing is basically, do we want to focus on productivity improvement, quality of the product, and then basically, do we want to create a company which is actually known for its technology? So, I mean, this discussion is still in between, I would say. I mean, global MNC operating in India, they are clearly the leader in Industry 4.0. Global Indian MNC, they have started doing it a bit. Some industries are leading, some industries are actually lagging in this. And then, I mean, smaller scale companies, I mean, they are very far away from this Industry 4.0 thinking. So, I think it's a mixed scenario right now, but as somebody was mentioning, this COVID has given us a huge opportunity. So we have to see in couple of years if companies are willing to invest some part of their profit in improving their manufacturing operations so that we can compete on quality and cost in the global markets. So that still needs to be seen.
Okay, thank you. Sandeep, I'll come back to you for some more questions, especially related to, what are the other strategic measures that would be needed for successful implementation of these transformation strategies. I'll go back to Dr. Agarwal, and I have a question for him. Yeah. So we had a government scheme announced in 2014 that was Make in India, right? And after that, we saw that the GDP contribution, instead of increasing, it actually declined from 18% to now, actually it went down to 14%. And then again, during the COVID times, it was touching around, I think, 10 to 12%. So it has gone quite down. Are the new initiatives that the government is announcing as far as Industry Tech 4.0 is concerned, are those aligned with Make in India initiatives or the scheme that was announced earlier?
So the fundamental does not change. The fundamental of the scheme of Make in India was, and in fact, if we recall in 2014-15, the Prime Minister says, Make in India, sell anywhere. I think that fundamental does not change. However, the schemes of the government and at the industry readiness was not there, and there is not enough liquidity in the market to apply, to raise the funds and to do certain those experiments. But I think now the government is very focused in providing that support. If you look at the liquidity in the market after the infusion of the stimulus is quite there, and there is a number of schemes which has been announced for MSME particularly, which are encouraging, and certainly that will be very interesting to see. A number of schemes are also been announced by certain state governments. So I believe the Make in India dream, what the government has seen few years back, at that time the implementation was poor. And another major roadblock which came during that time, the 2014-15, the scheme was announced, and 2017, the demonetization happened. So whole liquidity in the market was sucked into. So there was hardly any liquidity was there into the market, and then it took time to build up. By the time it got built up, then again 2019 happened, and due to the global cues, and there were China issue with, particularly with the US. At the same time, the Indian economy tanked. 2019 was also the time of the election, so every scheme of the government was done after the election. 2020 started, 2020 COVID happened. So it just like what you can say, it was incidental. The things were happening over a period of time. So actually, nobody got any time and effort to implement those things. But I believe there is a scope. Liquidity crunch will again come. The economy is contracting between anything between 5% to 15%. Nobody knows what will be the real contraction. But even for the conservative estimate by majority of the agencies, it will be -5 to 9%. The good news is coming from agriculture sector. The positive news are coming from a large scale manufacturing. The another positive news which has come into the recent time was about the defense sector, because the dependency of defense was 13% we were importing from abroad. So even I would say 70-50% of the requirement, which constitute around 6.5% of the defense equipment import, which can be done in India. So defense export, defense expenditure on, if you look at the GDP, is around 2 to 3%. So if you look at the GDP, impact will be much higher. And number of these things will go to MSME and SMEs, which will have positive impact. And I'll tell you one very quick story that will help you on understanding that how what India can do. And I tell this story to a number of forums. Recently, if you have heard that IIT Kanpur was pioneer in building up a ventilator in 70 days flat. So it was like setting up a Mangalyaan. If you have seen the famous story of Mangalyaan movie by Akshay Kumar, it was like it was sort of a waste to wealth situation. It was a waste rocket which was there, and Akshay Kumar team come and they did some heroic activity, and eventually it was sent. There are certain truth behind it, and certainly there is certain fiction as far the movie is concerned. But I can tell you the true story regarding the ventilator. In the March this month, this year, there are a bunch of people who came to us, who is our student, ranging from student from 26 years, 24 years, 22 years, and they were running a small robot company. They said India required 200,000 ventilators, but we have only 9,000 ventilators as we speak today. That was 18th of March. And we put up a task force, and going fast forward, we created a ventilator, developed our own ventilator in 70 days flat. And on 18th of March, nobody has seen a ventilator in their own life. It was a bunch of engineers, bunch of task force members. And ventilator being a very critical machine, because ventilators stop even for 30 seconds, you die. So ventilators cannot stop working. Ventilator is a very critical machine, but we did that within 70 days flat. And today, as we speak, there are hundreds of patients which are now on our ventilator in Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Gurgaon, Delhi. All these places, our live patients are there, and thanks God that every ventilator is working just perfect fine. It's not even stopping for a second. Forget about 30 seconds. So that's something which we have done in 70 days flat. So a ventilator being a very complicated machine, it requires around 700 components. And many of the components were bought from abroad. Now, on the same hand, I had a conversation with Dr. Nagendra Reddy, who is a Padma Bhushan and who runs one of the largest gastroenterology hospital in Hyderabad, called AIG Hospital, 1,000 bed. And I visited Dr. Reddy a few months back, and he took me for a round. And he said, Dr. Agarwal, look around. This hospital is one of the best hospitals in the world. It's like a 5-star. Like you go to Sheraton, you will say, okay, going to AIG hospital is better than going to Sheraton. It's like that. And he says that the machines which are around you, the only thing which is defining a hospital is me and certain drugs. Rest everything is engineering. You look at the beds, you look at the equipments, you look at your own ventilator, you look at lighting, LED lighting, everything is engineering. And 90% of this equipment that you see today, I import from abroad. So I immediately said to him, sir, even 90% of the things we can make in India, then we have thousands of hospitals.
Yeah.
And if you look at even today, the another challenge which I give it to all my entrepreneurial friends is look around in your own room. The lamp behind me is IKEA. The light which probably I'm lighting here is from China. The printer which is made here is from Taiwan. Everything which we are importing. If we look around in our room, the things that we are buying from outside, if we start producing those things in India, small things, from pen and paper being bought from China or bought from Korea or bought from elsewhere, we can make hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs on a daily basis. That is something which will define Make in India. Make in India does not mean that you have to be innovative all the time.
Yeah.
There is also called inspirational innovation. You can take inspiration from a product and make innovation. You don't have to be innovative. You don't have to be eureka. Every time you cannot be inventing anything. Do some incremental innovation. Do some design change. Make in India. That's how the Make in India will happen.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Your example reminded me of one case study actually, where they manufactured a machine very similar to the GE machine, which cost around $50,000, and when it was manufactured in India, it cost around $500, which could be taken very easily to the villages, and people could be checked like ECG kind of machine where their heartbeats and everything.
Yeah, sorry to mention about the pricing. Thanks for a lot. Since I mentioned Mangalyaan was sent by NASA probe for $700 million. Indian scientists did for $71 million. That is not Akshay Kumar. That is the real fact. And similarly, our fact is that the Philips machine or the GE machine that we were importing, like ventilators we were importing, because so expensive. On 18th of March, there were 9,000 ventilators in only 10 cities across the country. We have 647 cities in the country, and more than 6 lakhs 50,000 villages. Only 20 cities were having ventilators. Today, the ventilator that we are producing, few other manufacturers also producing, cost only 2 lakh rupees, 2.5 lakh rupees, whereas the Philips ventilator costs around 15 lakh rupees. So at the same quality, and today I can guarantee by look and feel, by looking at the UAI, by looking even the functionality, every single person, every single top doctor in India, including Mr. Naresh Trehan and Dr. Shetty, has endorsed it. He said they are as good as or probably better than any ventilator which is produced anywhere in the world. So, and there are a number of examples I can give you from IIT Kanpur. You can go to our website. With drone technology we are doing, with those things we are doing. The only reason that we are able to do is that when there is a customer which is willing to buy, and these hospitals are able to buy our ventilators, put it in their hospitals without even thinking about that we have to buy from outside. Like that, the coconut example, like, when the Indian go abroad, he become a Gora and he is more acceptable. But when India is in India doing the great thing, he is not acceptable. So that coconut mindset that we have to change, if we are able to change that, then we can do Make in India and we can do Industry 4.0 much faster than what we think.
Thank you so much. Yes, so inspirational, motivating for all of us. Yes, so we'll make sure that we will contribute towards this objective for India. Yeah, my next question to Mr. Piyush Sharma. Mr. Sharma, I would like to know similars. I would like to hear similar stories from IIT Delhi. You're muted. Sorry.
So Nikhil, you've been brilliant with whatever that you've stated, and we had the board meeting yesterday at IIT in the first half, and you mentioning ventilators, and we had masks. That is the big story, which is the Kavach, and which the Prime Minister wore. And I know absolutely the same story that you are echoing. So there are these islands of excellence which exist. There is this ability to be able to create, ability to build, ability to replicate, ability to every which way, whatever the successes that we is witnessing in the world of Silicon Valley or around the world. I think all of that exists right here, right now. All that we need to do is, and it's not an ecosystem issue, it's just that little extra, that little struggle. And I understand when you say that the light is from an IKEA and a tube is from somewhere and the bed is from somewhere. I get all of that. I still continue to remain optimistic. There is that brain drain issue. There are all of those things, but there are the geopolitical issues, and all of them as an ecosystem equivalent serve for me as a situation where I believe that finally all of it will come together well for us in India as also for the rest of the world. So I'm pretty optimistic, and I know that we started on a note where you asked that question where it was, and Nikhil answered with a conscious underlining of the word that I'm going to be starting with a pessimistic note. I would say that it is a note where I would want to sign off with a optimistic note where I say that. Yes, we have problems. We are humans, and we all along are tackling these stupid issues all the time. But at some point in time, we all wake up, we get sanitized, we get organized, and we just handle them right.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic.
Thank you. I heard that IITs are making some kind of e-cells, or those small organizations which are focusing mainly on Industry 4.2. Can we please elaborate on that?
Yeah, so Nikhil is of course far more competent and far more equipped to be able to answer that as an IITian himself, where he's ensconced in the system. I'm still an external board member kind of thing. But I know that IITs, of course, continue to produce all of those unicorns. And we know that out of the 30 odd unicorns that we have, 25, I don't know, 15 or 20 of them have come out of IIT Delhi. And IIT Delhi, like we were evaluating yesterday, Kavach, 4 of the most flagship projects that they shared with us. So, I mean, all of it is currently centered around COVID and around healthcare and around everything. But important for us to understand that it needs the whole dissemination. So it's not a question of adoption, it's a question of diffusion and dissemination. This is not, India is not IIT. India has to move beyond IIT. And this is where the whole concept of innovation needs to very clearly move from where we are to where we need to be. And that's how, I do not know whether in the ecosystem the state needs to play a role, the individuals need to play a role, the administrators need to play a role, the technologists need to play a role. This is where the true potential of India would truly be realized.
Thank you. Actually, this was, I came to know from Confederation of Indian Industry that they are having some joint collaboration with some of the IITs. Yeah, so that's why I asked. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll take my next question to Mr. Giri. Kindly elaborate on the training program that your firm provides on the organizational readiness, and that the program that you have developed on, how that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the I4.0 skill set scarcity is the main problem from India. In fact, some companies want to go for I4.0 projects, but they can't find the skilled resource from the market. We have a lot of engineers, but are they really skilled on I4.0? Question mark. And what we are doing, we are trying to collaborate with few deemed universities from India, where they are offering, let us say, majors in computer science engineering. And we want to offer minor program in Industry 4.0. So it could be 150 or 200 hours program, and cutting across all 9 components for 100 hours, and for one chosen component, the remaining 100 hours. And the entire program will be delivered by the industry people. In fact, two universities, one university from Noida, Calcutta University, and SRM University from Chennai. So they are almost going to sign. Having said that, the students for 4 years duration, okay, and 2 years they are going to dedicate for I 4.0. The moment they come out, they will have necessary knowledge to take, those kind of projects from the industry. Okay. That is point number one. And point number two, we are working with industry bodies like Confederation of Indian Industry and Madras Chamber of Commerce to offer cost-effective programs for their members across India. Okay, so it could be a common program organized by those bodies or client-specific training programs. In fact, there is a German entity called as Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. They recently signed the agreement with us. So they have around 7,000 companies from India, around 350 German companies. So they want to take this program to the doorstep to the members.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great initiative, actually, and that is why I was going to ask you that. How are you making it for yourself? Like, how are you making it expand and grow? Yeah.
But still it is very, very minimal, I would say, by seeing the huge potential we see from India. What we are doing is very, very minimal. We need to take the movement to the next level.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Shivesh, my next question is for you. As we mentioned, as we talked about the ROI for the MSMEs and the small scale industries, uh, what in your opinion would be a good way to motivate and inspire the small scale industries to adopt the industry 4.0? And yeah, so what will be the motivation? Because currently, as we all know, and we discussed in the previous webinar also, that when we talked about the startups, that they are facing liquidity issues, where managing liquidity and profitability itself is a very big issue. Then how can they think of transformation? So and since we are doing this project, we would like to bring at least some benefit or some change, and that's why I'm asking you that your opinion for how to motivate, and we can actually bring that up in the report as well.
Okay, so Neha, I think first of all, Mr. Giri, fantastic work you're doing. I really, it was eye opener, and I think we need more champions like you, right? Which essentially means that, come to think of it, and let me build on what Dr. Nikhil Agarwal said. So, and also Mr. Piyush Sharma, right? So we have islands of excellence, and then we have Bharat, right? So when we think of industry 4.0, we really need to be thinking, how do we spread this 4.0 from few islands of excellence to all across the country, right? And that's the challenge. Now, to me, that challenge has uh, three dimensions. So one is about talent, and I think the kind of work that Mr. Giri is doing, we need maybe 100 such Mr. Giris all across. Only then this sort of gets more pervasive, right? So every engineering college which is there, they need to be collaborating with innovators and leaders like Mr. Giri, who's created some sort of program, right? And that needs to be embedded. The second is would like to build upon Mr. Sandeep's thought, and that thought is about proximity to customers. So who drives innovation, and where does the business case of innovation or any new things come from? So essentially it comes from customers. Now, if you look at the MSME ecosystem, who's the prime customer for MSME? Invariably, when you look at it, it's mostly industrial selling, it's mostly B2B, which means that they are feeders to larger businesses. Now, if they are feeder to larger businesses, and if larger businesses are happy with 18% or 20% profitability, it means that the larger business, they have to act as motherboard to create an ecosystem around themselves where they sort of push, right? Or they lift all the industries which are in the surrounding network to help them climb this modernization ladder, right? And that ladder needs to be defined. It needs to be set in the path of MSME's journeys. For example, there are there are companies in Pune, especially again in automotive, right? So some of them, they have modernized just because the OEM, they drove that, right? So call it Bajaj, call it Mahindra, call it any other, right? So there are good examples around Pune area. So this relationship has to be far more deeper, and the modernization has to be driven by the larger organizations, or call it the OEMs in the context of automotive, right? But they need to set their path very clearly, right? And Sandeep said that if you are serving for foreign customers, you are trying to make things of a better quality, right? So I just want to give you an example. BS6, right? BS6 has been a lot of hype and hoopla about implementation of BS6, but come to think of it, BS6 engine manufacturing was present in India since 2014, but it was all for export market. When it came for domestic market, everyone started crying horse about it. It's impossible, and the business case did not exist. I really thought it was fairly stupid about the whole industry, and industry was not willing to provide leadership. And in that case, it was pushed down the throat by Supreme Court. Even government was not willing to bite the dust, right? So it is this complexity of ecosystem, but we need leaders from industry to say that we need to do this for India. Now, Make in India for World is a great story, right? But Make in India for Indians is also an important story, and somewhere there are customers within India who are also willing to pay for a good product. BMWs are already selling here, right? Mercs and BMW, everyone is selling. There are customers who want to buy, and they are willing to pay for it. So that is my second part, that larger industries need to focus, and they need to create within their own ecosystem, call it a supply chain, and lift the industries to grow, to move up the ladder. The third is government has to do it, right? So what does Make in India essentially mean, right? Or why would a country want to adopt 4.0? It's a fairly simple economic question, right? I want to adopt 4.0 as a country because I want to make my manufacturing more competitive, right? It's all about country competitiveness. It's all about manufacturing competitiveness. If we don't do this, that 16% has already fallen to 14, or maybe 15, 17 has fallen to 16, or maybe 15.5. It will fall down further, and we are increasingly going to become more what you call services and services economy. So while I love, right, I work with startups, and we all love that we have so many unicorns. But my serious question today is, we don't have product unicorns. We mostly have services sector unicorns, right? So I really think the responsibility that you have taken is far serious, and is far more important for a country like ours. And the question is fairly serious. How do we make manufacturing more competitive in India, right? Such that the share in GDP increases, the share in export increases, and it starts creating far more jobs than what it is creating right now. So these are the fundamental questions. 4.0 can be disruptive. Initially, there is going to be job losses, but someone needs to really say that we are going to sustain this, because if we stay there for a little longer, 3 years, 4 years, then the benefits are going to be far more rewarding than what we are able to see now. So from far, I'm able to see a larger business case. It requires patience, and that patience, the business leaders need to believe that this patience has fruits at the end, right? And I think Indian business leaders have a lot to answer. With that, I stop.
Thank you so much. Actually, that is what we were initially, and I hope we'll be able to do that. So we were trying to link up the implementation, or this effective strategy implementation, to the financial performance. But I believe that it is very, very early for us to do that, because hardly industries have moved from industry 2.0 to 3.0. And then,
if you don't do this, Neha, and if we don't do this, the pitfalls are far more scarier than what we can imagine. Yeah. Right? So there are fruits, and the pitfalls are far more scarier. So let the big boys of industry, they feel it, and let those pitfalls drive them to do things, to take more responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, my next question to Mr. Suraj Jayaraman. Yeah, are you there? Yeah, okay. So could you please elaborate on some of the KPIs that the companies can take note of for the successful implementation? Like few KPIs that you could
Yeah,
suggest for Indian companies. Yeah.
sure. So when we get into a digital transformation project, so probably I can just tell on a company's perspective, a manufacturing company, previously they get into a transformation only when they need to increase revenue or reduce cost, right? I mean, it always comes to increasing profit margin, but it has come to a time, as Mr. Shivesh and all other would agree, it has come to a time where even to survive in this industry, you need to transform. So you cannot run the usual business as it is, and you cannot have business as is, because there are a lot of competition from all over the world, and every company is striving to get the best out of their resources and in finding a niche space probably to get. So like when we talk about this industrial 4.0 or like digital transformation itself, there are few things every company faces, like from our experience when we approach, right? So we have worked with bigger enterprises like in the huge companies in logistics space to smaller SMEs. Like even I was a general manager of a publishing industry before I started Performatics, where we had a traditional business of printing directories and all. And to transform that to digitally, the process itself, like it's, yeah, so you need, like I said before, like a lot of education. So the first thing you face is employee hesitation, right? So the employees always hesitate to adapt to a change because they fear that, you know, they can't catch up with what is coming. So, so in that, educating the employees, or probably like something like we said for upskilling the employees from the government, can help a lot. And second thing is this: all the manufacturing industries are running on a very cash sensitive way, right? So they have a specific budget to spend, and they are quite skeptical on whether they want to spend this on, you know, changing something which is already running fine. Yeah. So again, so there again, this supporting grant. So if the government support, or like if funding comes, which the companies feel that, you know, they don't really are working on their budget, instead they are getting an external support to do this, which benefits both parties, then it works again. Then third thing again, like what we usually face is the operations of the manufacturing are quite complicated, and they deal with lot of resources, and they deal with a lot of tight schedules. So sometimes even they don't even find time, you know, like even to think of digital transformation. So this is where, as Mr. Giri said, if the management decides or management is committed to transform, and like Shivas was just mentioning, the business owners have to come out, and they should take a decision that, okay, I'm going to do this irrespective of what is coming, right? So someone has to start, this revolution has to start. Then obviously one company starts doing, I mean, the usual trend we see is, you know, all the other companies start. Now coming to a point on how to digitally transform, or how to get into 4.0 in a probably in a calculative way, so that, you know, you disrupt the industry, I mean the business as well as, but I mean you disrupt the industry but not your business. Yeah. So we can start from very beginner level. Like there are most of the companies, if you see, like especially those traditional manufacturing companies, they have already a lot of data points which they are not using, right? I mean, so there have been some case studies where we have just applied machine learning on some of, so there was a food delivery company based out of Singapore, where we use their existing data and we just optimize the route, how they deliver, and they could save like almost 10% on their operational cost. The same thing, we use their previous, say like orders that they are getting, and build a predictive ordering mechanism where they could actually know that, you know, what raw materials to buy and how much to spend here and there, and they could save almost like 20% in their order. So all this eventually contributes to their P&L or the growth of the company. So they can start from very basic things like, you know, digitalizing their existing data, or centralizing their existing systems into one, so that they get a like bird view kind of analysis, and they can make sense out of what they are doing. As a business, if you see that, I've met entrepreneurs who are running business for the past 20 years, like even 30 years, where they just follow that process from day one until end of 30 years. Maybe like the cost might have changed, or their pricing might have changed, but if you see how much they have evolved as a process, is actually quite alarming. So suddenly, like say Google comes, for example, like this directory business, Google comes in and the directory business is gone, right? So they have to adapt to the changes that's coming in. So again, if you want to get into this 4.0, there are so many case studies we have done, like using IoT, where it's not only about, most of the discussion, it always come into how this company is growing, or how impactful this transformation is going to be on a business perspective, right? It's not only about business perspective, it's also about, say, like safety and security of a company, right? So we have done a project in oil and gas industry where the employees can wear a wearable device, and immediately when they fall, when an accident happens, it alerts the system to get immediate attention. So that we managed to do it using an IoT device. So previously it takes like almost like 3-4 hours to identify that this person is missing and there is an accident to get. So that experience, so obviously, like when you take care of such incidents, you are actually avoiding cost in that perspective, right? And also once this guy is down, the process is disrupted, and especially in oil and gas, it's actually cost a lot. And there is another scenario where we work with Port of Singapore, where we collated all the data which where they were having accidents, the trucks inside the port when they were transporting goods. Then we found patterns on, for X and Y condition, like probably at this hour, like from early morning with this weather condition, that more accidents are prone to happen. So these kind of things actually are, but to start again, someone who is sitting on top of these organizations have to have this vision. Vision is one thing. And second, you need people to implement this, right? So you need to have like a black belt layer or second layer of people who understands your vision and who takes this project as their KPI. There shouldn't be like, they shouldn't mix up. So usually what happens is like you have like a head of department who is running operations. Suddenly the management comes and says that, now there is a new CRM coming in, so you just implement that, right? So, and that doesn't work actually. The strategy, or probably the process we as a company follow with all these clients when they get into a digital transformation journey, I would say again, our part as a technology service provider or a technology partner is very minimal in this digital transformation journey. So probably I'll say like 10 to 15%, but the rest 85% comes from the company itself. So so there are like a 4 to 5 step process. Probably I can just shortly explain that. So one is like access their current ecosystem, where they need to assess what they're having now, right? So the current company performance, state of market, their market share, what their competitors are doing, and how they can adapt to the new technologies. That's one. And then you do like a SWOT analysis, where you find your strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, right? So you follow that, then definitely you have come to a conclusion where, okay, this is where we are standing, this is where the market's players are standing, and this is where we need to reach. So that with that, you define your goals, KPIs for your digital transformation roadmap. Then you identify roles and responsibilities within the organization, outside the organization, where, say if it's a digitally, if say for example, like bringing a new ERP system is going to be a game changer, then you find a vendor who fits to that, or you talk to your IT department and you assign these roles and responsibility to your people. Then again, you have to, so that most of the times, most companies get into this stage. If you ask me, like, they have identified, they know this project has to execute. But then you need to prioritize what has to go first. You don't go and transform the whole process itself, right? So you prioritize, you strategize, then most importantly, you monetize your plan. So every plan, whatever plans you make, whatever KPIs you make, you need to attach like how much you're going to spend and how much you're going to get out of this. effort wise, money wise, etc. Then you follow a milestone, and there are
strategy implementation that we do, considering both financial and non-financial
yes,
factors, and assigning financial value to the non-financial factors as well.
correct. Yeah. So once you have this, then it becomes not only the management's responsibility to do this. So it comes to like the basic employee level. So everyone knows that they are playing a part of this, and everyone has something to look into, because now I think most of the digital transformation journey, like they begin to do something, but they don't set expectations right to the vendors as well as within themselves. So they need to have like a longer plan, and this longer plan again can be segregated into smaller plans. So you can have like monthly targets, and even you don't have to rush into a digital transformation journey, but instead you spend quality time, assessing your current condition versus what you want to achieve, then make a decision based on that.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
No.
Yeah, and my last question is for Mr. Rela. Mr. Rela, in your organization, you, if not Industry 4.0 per se, but you might have implemented some digital or some digitalization processes, some kind of digitization. So in that, or maybe even 4.0 related technology, have you noticed any, like, are there any observations of improvements in the business performance, or have you noticed some benefits out of the technology, or effective implementation of strategy in that sense?
I think this question is again a very, controversial question in all the boardroom meetings, because it is still an emerging trend in Indian manufacturing sector, and then this discussion is always going on. Like, how do we basically measure? Like the previous panelist was basically talking about KPIs. So, if we don't set the right KPIs, then measuring ROI on any such technology is very difficult to measure. One other thing, I'll just bring other perspective also, and then I'll try to answer your question, which is specific to my organization. See, for any such program, technology alone is not enough to deliver it. And digital transfer, any transformation, be it a digital transformation, it is part of the large business transformation process which any organization is actually trying to do. And digital transformation also use some technology, tools, know-how to get the desired results. So if we mess up anywhere in the entire value chain, that desired result actually does not come. So what essentially is required is basically, first of all, the leadership vision, and then how much they are involved in that. And after that, do we have the required budgetary support aligned with that program? Because many a times, in fact, I have seen, and I continue to discuss this with my peers in other industries as well, that we kickstart one transformative program using digital, and then we are impatient. In 2 or 3 quarters, you cannot observe the visible change, and then suddenly our priorities changes. So this patience thing needs to be there. And then basically, do we have the right governance, which basically brings me to the right capability as well. Because right now, digital transformation or even industry 4.0, there is a huge skill set gap in terms of leaders who can lead it, and in terms of people who can execute it or implement it. So basically, all these issues basically combine together, and then it becomes very difficult to get the right measurable ROI on the project. Now, coming to like one example of, let us say, of my organization, and I would rather say it is common to other manufacturing organization also, for whom actually this is a new concept. So like, we let us say implemented product life cycle management tool, which is again one big piece which you basically do to improve your lead time of products to market. So this is one thing which you want to do. other objectives which you want to achieve through it is like you want to really minimize the number of components in product. Like typically in automobile or automotive companies, you look at the complexity of a product in terms of how many number of components you are managing. So one of the key initiative of PLM, product lifecycle management tool, is to basically standardize the components so that you are basically able to create economies of scale. Because if you have more components, then you will have more suppliers, and then you will have more complexity to manage on the manufacturing line. So and another objective from PLM is basically to reduce the cost. If you can achieve, so all of these things are actually linked. If you can reduce the time to market, you will save a lot of cost. If you are able to reduce number of components, again, you will improve the quality, as well as then another panelist was talking about this is a responsibility of OEMs to basically bring a lot of other tier 2 or tier 3 suppliers to this industry 4.0 platform. But it becomes very difficult when you have more number of suppliers. You can maybe do it with top 20, 25 suppliers, but then bringing everybody to that platform becomes very difficult if you have a huge supply chain where you are involved with so many vendors, right? So I think uh, we implemented it, and then we are still figuring out what output it has given to us. We are still looking it as a cost, but in terms of ROI, or in terms of what benefit it has brought to business, we have to look at it in two ways: quantitative benefits, which can definitely be in the form of whether we are able to improve our productivity, or whether we are able to deliver right products at the right time and at the right cost, so that our business is growing. And other is basically the qualitative benefits, which are basically, have we reduced the complexity in the system, which automatically will improve our quality, or less downtime on the lines. So to be honest, I would say that yes, we have achieved something, but have we achieved the true potential? No, we are very, very far away from it. So this is just one example. And when I discuss this among the many people in the among my peers in various industries, so they have the same issues to discuss. I think Mr. Shivesh want to say something.
No, I think Sandeep ji, fantastic, and I just have one simple point to make. Right, lately I've been working with a electric scooter startup, so which got incubated with us, and now it's a full fledged. They do about 1,000 scooters a day, right? So it's a small setup altogether, but my learning is something fantastic out there, right? So if you go to a Bajaj plant or a Hero Honda or any of those plants, a typical two-wheeler will take about 1,000 components, right? Parts and components. Which now, how's technology changing? Now, if you there are only about 26 parts to assemble, parts which have to be plugged in to make a scooter. Now, from 1,000 to 26, the game changes. Now, if you start imagining your business in those sense, and then say that, okay, now if I start talking to my supply chain and say, okay, guys, let's do a smart factory or a smart manufacturing, right? It becomes possible. So, my learning of lately, right, and this is only about last 12 months of the work that we have done, is uh, and I don't want to compare with the kind of earth moving stuff that you guys do, right, which is far more complex, heavy, etc., etc. I'm only limiting it to a two-wheeler space. But as I see life and technology evolving, I think that journey is going to happen much faster with global OEMs. So Volvos and JCBs and everyone, they're not going to stop. They will also go into compact technologies, and with compact technology, it's going to become possible for their supply chains to be more coherent with 4.0 standards, and the rest, that's a big question mark for the rest. And in my sense, so if I was government, if I was the CEO, so there are two big stakeholders, the policymakers. One is the government, other is the CEOs and the owners, right? So these two are two big power centers, and they need to be thinking about this problem far more. And they need to be supporting all the initiatives that Mr. Giri is doing, right? So government should be rolling out tax incentives for Mr. Giri for that modern education to be rolled out all across, such that it goes to Bharat. It's not just limited to, so I studied IIT, right? So, but it has to go to spread over to all parts of the country. Only then we can see Industry 4.0 to become reality. Otherwise, I like to be optimistic, but I'm super cautious.
I completely echo with what you are actually saying. Just last comment. I mean, this one of this mega trend which is emerging, like electrification of everything. I mean, Industry 4.0, it is in the plant, but like you just look at Tesla. I mean, they have created a car which is a living example of, automobile machine moving on the road with all the capabilities of what we call digital or Industry 4.0. And in fact, there are many more companies which are following example of Tesla in their own industries. For example, Caterpillar in USA, they are also creating a machine which is like a connected machine. It gives a smart information to the driver, and it is possible to run these machines without even a driver. And then in our industry also, there is a big player like John Deere. And John Deere is also moving from just a product to IoT, sensor, data cloud, and a touch screen based solution. It's more like a machine moving in the agriculture land, which is capturing a lot of information from the environment and then directing the driver to make the right choices in terms of what input to use in how much quantity, so that he can optimize all the costs. So I mean, there are enough examples, and I think in India we just don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to look at the successful examples which are happening in everybody's industry, either in US and Europe. We might have to find some affordable solution. Other than that, I think learning curve is already there. So we just don't need to reinvent, and we definitely need a lot of support from Indian government, because everywhere it has been led by government in some form, either by supporting some research institutions who are doing this fantastic job of solving some problems in the labs or research institutes, and then along with obviously manufacturing giants, and then they basically create a useful case which can be implemented in manufacturing. So yes, I think government needs to do enough, and then so that institutions like IITs, they can participate in these case studies, and then manufacturing giants also need to participate in that. And once it is affordable with a good example of proving the ROI, then I think there wouldn't be any stopping of implementing these in the whole setup of companies which are into heavy engineering or manufacturing.
Exactly. Absolutely agree. Absolutely. Yes. So with the government support and with the right talent and commitment from the leaders, all will come together, and that's where the success of Industry 4.0 will begin. Now, because we're running short of time, let me take quickly the questions from the audience. So here we have a question from Miss Tanuja. She's written, "We have got brains, we develop products for Indian context. Then why are we not succeeding? Is it only because of lacking in marketing or publicity?" I would invite any panelists to take up this question.
I can answer this question. Like at IIT Kanpur Incubation Center, we have 75 companies which go through the similar questions all the time. Uh, that what does it take for Indian companies to succeed? Certainly, marketing and publicity plays a very large role. I can tell you one of the conversation I had with my very good friend who is the small business writer in the US today, one of the very well-known authors. So we, many years back, uh, myself and Steve and plus another 14 authors have published one book called Planet Entrepreneur, and it was published by Wiley. It was one of the best publisher in the world, and the kind of reviews we got was absolutely mind-boggling. A lot of people wrote that it's the best entrepreneurship book ever written, and you have to learn about entrepreneurship. You should go do this, you do that. but eventually we sold just less than 2,000 copies all over the world. Despite of the fact 14 authors from different countries wrote the book. One of the things that we learned the hard way after publishing that book and doing the really good work was writing and publishing was only 10-15% part of it. If you're making a product, that does not mean that everybody wants that product, everybody is looking for that product. You have to make sure that right publicity is done, right usability of that product is also find out. Everything can be sold. So certainly some of the Indian entrepreneurs who are today here, I would be very keen to invite them. If they have a good product or good idea to discuss, we will be willing to discuss with them. They can come forward, and if we both agree that there is a potential to take this forward, you can incubate with us. IIT Kanpur will be very glad to help you out in doing this. That's what I do. I have my colleague Mr. Rahul Patel, who is there and who is one of the co-hosts of this event. So you can get in touch with me. You can get in touch with Rahul. But I would say that focus on the quality, not just focus on the product marketing at the first point of time. The first is the product quality is excellent. Most likely it will do well.
Thank you so much. Next question, Neha wants to ask. So, Neha.
Yeah, so this question is for all panelists. So, a lot of you mentioned about, how the consumer demand is actually abroad, and Indians probably don't demand a very high quality product because they're more concerned about price. But if you think about, from the industry perspective, how do we solve this consumer story, right? Because Industry 4.0 cannot get adopted and embraced just banking on the fact that we'll be able to export everything and fetch the price that we would like to. How do we change the consumer mindset in India? Because I think that is necessary for Industry 4.0 to really work in India.
Yeah. Can I answer this question?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the moment we talk about Industry 4.0, everyone feels that it is meant for big companies. In fact, big companies got a lot of manpower and muscle power. Think about MSME sector. In fact, I went to small industries from Chennai. Let us call it as micro industry that constitutes around 88% total factory in India, less than 5 crore rupees. Yeah. And when I met them, they want to go for Industry 4.0. The main challenge is affordability. They can't spend in terms of lakhs or millions. They can spend only in terms of thousands. In fact, I took it very personal to me. So we started developing a point solution meant for MSME sector, combination of IoT, cloud, and the machine learning program. Yeah. So we are going to roll out the product in next 8 weeks. 60% development completed. The solution is there are 23 parameters from any industry, starting from temperature, vibration, flow, and pressure, so and so. So we are going to provide 25 different sensors, and everything can be configured in the PCB board. The same PCB board we are going to make from India, either from Coimbatore or Gujarat. Yeah? And there will be gateway, and all information go to the MS Azure cloud platform, and there we are going to write the logic for each client. Yeah? And we are going to position the entire solution less than 10,000 rupees. So one-time investment. So they will get 4 sensor and 1 PCB board and IoT gateway. That's all. And every month based on the usage. For example, 4 sensor means 500 rupees per each. So 2,000 rupees billing rate. Like if any client want to go for 10 sensor, 5,000 rupees including GST. Yeah. And come to the point to fulfill the affordability portion. So we want to roll out the project only meant for micro industry. So taking the latest technology to the doorstep to the small players. Like a 10,000 one-time investment and 500 rupees per sensor monthly billing rate. They can able to measure either maintenance issue or even the production issues. Yeah.
Thank you. I think there's one more question from the audience. Dr. Nisha, if you want to take that.
And the last question from the audience, he's Mr. Rahul Gupta. He's asking, how do we ingratiate to execute these ideas which seems implausible at the beginning? So, yeah. So, Mr. Rahul, you can ask a question. I think your question is not very clear. I've allowed you to talk.
Good evening to the all panelists. Am I audible?
Yes.
Ma'am, actually, I've joined as a sponsored candidate as a student to do my second PG, and I have been very active in listening to all these webinars being organized by the SIIC, and I somehow give a thank to all the panelists in all the webinars, and it has really enchanted me and created uh, a kind of inquisitiveness in my mind. So I've been hearing, and I could second that part that we really need an amalgamation or the collaboration from all the different players, whether it relates to the technology, talent, skills. Because we being the young India, the average Indian age at present is around 30 to 35. So my query was how do we execute these ideas? Because generally we have 90% of people have got the ideas, and we have the exact strategy also, but we are not able to execute those ideas, whether it is related to the financial inclusion or the uh, getting the eradication of the poverty in India, whether it is a water management, waste management. So my query is that we have all discussed in all the webinars only about the problems. What I'm not able to understand, how do we get that into the execution part? So how do we start with that? Although I'm making a paper on that and I'll be submitting it to Dr. Agrawal, uh, but since I'm not available at present, we being asked to be on the web mode to interact, and I'll be sending the mails to Professor Bandyopadhyay also. So that was my query, that I was not able to understand how do we execute those things. I mean, anyhow.
I can I answer? I would like to just talk a bit about it. So these kind of ideas, when we as individuals, when we come across, and I think similar story is mine. When I came across this industry 4.0 and digital, not per se industry 4.0, I started my idea with digital transformation, and then I read couple of papers where I came to learn that all digital transformations do not result in positive financial performance. So then I got intrigued by it, and I started looking at Indian manufacturing and was shocked to see the GDP contribution and the performance of manufacturing sector, and read couple of more papers which elaborated on the deteriorating situation of the manufacturing sector. And that those ideas were actually going on in my mind, and I decided that okay, I have to do something, I have to write something. And once we write these papers, we take these ideas to the stakeholders, and that's these roundtables are one such part that we are trying to talk to various stakeholders, for example IIT Kanpur, and then we are talking to various consultants, we're talking to the large manufacturing companies like escorts on this roundtable. However, with the project submission, we really hope that we will catalyze these ideas and take it forward to the government as well. I think we are organizing one more webinar, which is on the coming Saturday, where we are inviting government officials, and we'll be doing similar discussion with them. And that the whole idea is to talk about this issue and to come up with some insights where we can together prepare at least some thoughts, collate some thoughts together and present it to the stakeholders. And then slowly these ideas will go to the bigger people, or the bigger organization where they will implement. So this is one contribution from our side that we all can make. That is one place. Another thing that you rightly asked, that lot of things in India do not get solved, for example poverty, and there are lots of grants and schemes which do not work. So one such example I have, last few days we were working on one project proposal which was related to the agriculture industry, and I, as a part of the research, I went to the Make in India, Make in India website, where the schemes of the government was there for the agriculture. So I noticed that there are 6 schemes laid out by the Indian government for the establishing of the labs and testing facilities and warehouses and the cold storage facilities for the food items, for to prevent the food loss as a part of sustainability, right? So those schemes have already been implemented, and those schemes have given a huge amount of grant, and even the partnership is by the government. But the project that we were thinking of is coming from the grassroots level. So we were thinking of doing something even at a smaller scale, where we can actually use technology to help the farmers, right? So again, how do we execute it? Either we can do it at our individual level, or we can collaborate it with the government. But what I've seen for so far, that Indian government has been very kind, and they always come up with schemes, but somehow those schemes, at the granular level, they do not benefit. And I think the reason for that is the middle layer, and that we need to somehow, I think industry 4.0 will be very useful in breaking that layer. For example, using blockchain technology to track the government grant which has actually gone to the beneficiaries or not. Or for example, the competitiveness of the product that we want to check, the imports which are coming in into India are flooding the Indian markets at the quality level. So the quality also can be tracked by using the technology like blockchain and other things. So that is what I wanted to say. Sorry, I took a lot of time. I open this question for the panelist. Thank you.
I would only say that you were brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you so much. I'll just take. Okay, so we have no more questions, and I think we ran over time as well. I would like to thank you from the depth of my heart to all the panelists for being here and supporting our initiative. And I really hope that we will be able to keep in touch and learn more from you, and spread more information about this. So thanks a lot. Thank you so much to our audience as well for being so patient and staying with us all throughout and asking your very intelligent questions. Thank you so much. Yeah. Anybody would like to say something? Yeah.
Thanks, Nisha, for this
Thank you very
wonderful
much.
opportunity. I mean, I'm quite
Thanks
glad
a lot.
that I could meet all of them, and it's kind of a very intelligent and a very